The annual South African CSGO shuffle has taken effect, and with that, we've seen a change to a number of top CSGO teams in South Africa. Last week, I released my personal ranking of the top 10 teams in South African CSGO, and 8 out of those 10 teams have made some form of a change, whether it's changing 1 or 2 players or releasing the entire roster, like in Online Kingdom's case. So there's been a bunch of changes that have happened over the past few weeks, and I'm going to be making this video discussing the changes, talking about, how the player, what sort of an effect the player leaving the team has, and then what sort of effect have the players that they brought in are going to be having on the rosters that they joined. So jumping straight in with our first changes, we are going to be looking at Energy. So Energy removed Tianki and Lichlord from their roster. Now, Energy were actually the 3rd best team by my ranking over the past couple of months. They were a pretty decent team. I think that they sort of probably were reaching their skill ceiling as well, reaching their potential with this team, and you could see they started to stagnate, and it was pretty clear that some changes had to be made, and I think the changes that they made were fantastic. Big fan of the changes that Energy have made, bringing Flexi and Wipeout into the team. Now, Flexi needs no introduction. He's been a part of top flight CSGO in South Africa for a number of years now. In fact, most of his successes come from the Energy roster as well. Throughout 2019, he played with Sinister Five under Zero Chance, and he was successful, he was good, but everybody knows that Flexi has this ability to be an insane star player. And over the past few years, I would say we haven't really seen that level out of him, but I'm fully confident that he still has that ability, and maybe this is the team he's going to be able to be tapping into that potential. And we can see that 2017 Flexi coming back to the forefront. That 2016 2017 Flexi was just like such a force to be reckoned with. When he was playing B, you just didn't go B as the T side because he was so tough to overcome. And Wipeout is the second player that they've brought into their team. Now, Wipeout was sort of dubbed as an up-and-coming star player, if you will. Lots of people spoke about him very highly in terms of his mechanical ability. We saw him got picked up briefly by Vindictive a couple months ago when that team under Black Poison was making some moves. And the fact that he even got picked up by Black Poison speaks volumes to the potential that people saw in him. So he's now found himself in Energy under PND as the captain of the team. And I'm really keen to see what he's going to be capable of bringing to the table in this organization and in this roster. Like I said, people have spoken quite highly of him, so I've got some big expectations, and I think the firepower that he's going to be bringing is certainly going to be aiding Energy's cause. Keen to see how that's going to be working out. I think this Energy team is more balanced than what it was before with Lichlord and Tianki. I think that they had maybe like a bit too much experience and too much structure and not enough firepower to really allow them to compete with Goliath Gaming and ATK consistently. And now with the acquisition of Flexi and Wipeout, I think that's been elevated a level, and that that firepower is not lacking whatsoever anymore. In fact, they've got so much firepower now, it brings up the question for me of who's going to be doing the shitty roles? Who's going to be taking the responsibility of setting the team up, enforcing the structure, allowing players like Destroyed, Mango, Wipeout to play that nice fluent style? I mean, PND, he's the AWPer as well, right? So it's not like he can just play a fully supportive role. Maybe Flexi is going to be taking up some of those roles. He is one of the more experienced players in this team now, and he understands Counter-Strike very, very well. So he knows what it takes to set his teammates up. So we might see Flexi shifting into that sort of a role. Like I said, I'm not sure who's going to be picking up the slack for this team as Tianki and Lichlord, but mostly Tianki would have done before the changes. So that's definitely something I'm going to be looking forward to see how they approach that. But yeah, otherwise, looking forward to this Energy team. I think that they've got a lot more firepower now, and I'm keen to see how that's going to be affecting them going forward. So, from Energy, we switch across to Ekasi. Now, I'm trying to keep a bit of fluidity in this video, so when you see one player being removed from a roster, I talk about him in the next roster if he has moved into another team, that is. And in this case, it's Lichlord. Ekasi removed Bullock from their active playing roster. Now, Bullock's been having a lot of external events over the past few months which have been affecting him and haven't really allowed him to tap into his full potential and play to his maximum ability. I chatted to a few of the players in Ekasi and they spoke really highly of Bullock, and they mentioned how they actually saw him as the most mechanically skilled player in that team, which is quite an accolade if you think about it. So this change was a bit more of a forced change than a change that they wanted to make, I think. So it's unfortunate that Bullock didn't get to live up to his full potential, and yeah, it's one of those things, right? So in his place, they bring Lichlord into the team. And now Lichlord, of course, came off the back of playing with energy throughout most of 2020, and I think he sort of he relit the fire behind him. In my opinion, he's rebuilt his name and got his name back into the conversation of top flight South African CS:GO. You know, he had a bit of a period where he wasn't playing too much and he wasn't very active, but this energy team certainly brought him to the forefront of South African CS:GO, and he now finds himself in Ekasi Esports as the captain of the team. I'm not sure if Lichlord's actually done much IGLing before. He certainly wasn't the IGL in energy. Now he comes into Ekasi where he is the most experienced player, and he's taken over the reins as IGL from Gemini. So he's taken some responsibility off Gemini's shoulders, allowing him to just go back to being a fragger sort of thing. I think Gemini was a decent leader. Like, I spoke to him a bit and I could see that he knew what it took to be a leader, and they had some decent structure in the team, but I think that Lichlord will be a better IGL. He just knows the game very well. He's worked under some of the top players in South African CS, so he brings a ton of experience to the team. He likes to be aggressive as well, especially on the CT side. So I think we're going to be seeing Ekasi, like, you know, one of those teams who like to get aggressive on the CT side, make some moves, unsettle the Ts, not just sit back and, you know, sort of receive them on the defensive end. So I'm keen to see how this works out. I think that this increases the Ekasi team's stock in general. I'm wondering who the star player is going to be in this team. I think that Badger definitely has the potential. When who else pops off, he also looks really good, and so does DMS. I think that Gemini is going to be more of the supportive role, or maybe the entry fragger, but not necessarily the star player. But I'm interested to see where they're going to be finding majority of their firepower going forward. I think that they've got the ability to have the structure, and they have got the firepower, but who's going to be that star player? Who's going to stand up and take that responsibility? We're going to have to find out. So, moving across now from Ekasi into White Rabbit Gaming. Now, WRG, they actually removed Zio from their roster and they added Tianki. Now, Zio's been a long-standing member of this WRG team for a very long time. He was a part of the team back in 2019, you know, when they competed at Comic-Con Africa with the likes of Mango, Doru, Spaz, and the fifth isn't coming to mind right now, but point being, he's been a long-standing member of this team, and I'm not sure exactly what the reason is, whether they decided to cut him, they wanted to bring a new look to the team, whether he stood back, whether he stood down. I know he became a father recently, so maybe he had some other demands on his back that he had to tend to. Regardless, Zio's out of the question, or out of the conversation, and they've brought Tianki into the team. Now, Tianki also got removed from Energy recently, and he's found himself now in WRG, and he's actually taken over the reins as captain and IGL as well from Zio. Now, just looking at the personalities of Zio and Tianki, you have two contrasting individuals. Zio, very loud, you know, he's that type of guy who likes to get in your face. He wants to be aggressive. He's an aggressively natured individual in CSGO as well. Always wants to take fights, always sees himself as the better player. Great mentality to have. Sometimes it can, you know, can lead to his demise because he takes unadvised fights and unadvised, you know, maybe you know, makes a few abrupt decisions, but it works out for him more often than not, right? Tianki, on the other side, he's one of those players who's always been like very sound and structured in South African CS, like one of the cool, calm players that you can rely on, often takes up the shitty roles in South African CS, like doesn't get much props for that, but a very good supportive player and a very good player to have in the team in general. From what I can tell, his attitude is really good in the game as well. He's never going to be that guy who's like bringing the team down and is like super down when things aren't going his way. Always got a smile on his face, and you really want that type of individual in a team. Taking over as captain, though, I'm a little bit skeptical of. I've never seen Tianki IGL before, and I'm keen to see how it's going to be working out for him. I mean, we've had Lichlord and him who came off the back of that energy roster, and now they've shifted into two lower teams, and they've both taken over as IGL. So it's interesting, right? Because they've been competing in the top level of South African CSGO for a number of months now. So maybe they feel like they have what it takes. They have that experience behind them now to aid them in being an IGL, a successful IGL at that. All round, this WRG team is actually looking fairly balanced. I will say it feels like they might be lacking a star player, but with that being said, I think that Takpo could be going back to that like 2016, 2017 days where he was just this like lights out star player. In my opinion, over the past few years, he's like calmed down a little bit more and sort of like filled the roles that the team has needed, whether he's like gone into entry fragger or he's looked to set up his team a little bit more, maybe shifted away from the spotlight player. I actually want to see him going back into that spotlight player. I want to see Tuckpork just going back and banging people, you know, making those crazy plays, just being absolutely nutty like he's always been, you know, coming from the Call of Duty background. He's one of those players who likes to get in your faces, he likes to be aggressive, and I really want to see that coming to the forefront again in this WRG team. I think that Tuckpork certainly has potential to be a star player, and I really hope that we actually see that. For me, Spaz, he's sort of molded himself in that like really sound, consistent player. Also, I mean, still super young, and he's been in this team for like 3 years now, I think. Or he was in Big Five, and then he was in WRG. It's like pretty much the only two big orgs that he's played for, and he's been part of South African CSGO for like 4 years now. So even though he's so young, he's still very experienced. But the most experienced player on this team, without a doubt, is Custom. Now, Custom is one of South Africa's stalwarts. But he's not like one of those experienced players who's just still playing for fun, right? Because he's still able to go toe-to-toe with some of the best in South Africa when he's on his game. Doesn't matter whether it's a deagle, a rifle, an AWP, he still gets the job done at a very high level. I'm a massive fan of Custom personally, and I think that he's one of the most important players in this team actually, because he's sort of the rock in this team in my opinion. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he's going to be progressing, considering now that Zio's not in the team. I mean, that's South Africa's power couple, right? Zio and Custom, everybody knows that they've played together for a number of years in South African CSGO, so that duo has been split up once again. But just going back to my point about, you know, maybe lacking a star player, Custom has been a star player in his past when he's had the AWP and he's been given the license to, you know, make plays. He can actually dominate a game and take over a server. So I would really like to see Custom and Tuckpork going back to their roots and going back to those scenarios where they did, or they were given a bit more license to go crazy and make plays. In my opinion, I'd like to see them being sort of shifting back into the star player roles as opposed to being the players who are helping set up the structure in the team. So we'll see how that works out over the next few weeks. I haven't mentioned Eli or Kyle. He's actually been one of the players who's impressed me from WRG as well. He's been playing in this team for a couple of months, and I think he's been a sound individual, which is all they've sort of needed, right? They don't need him to pop off and go crazy and be a star player when they've got the other players in the team that they do. So keen to see how that's going to be progressing over the next few months. Shifting across now to Sinister Five. Just having a quick read here. Okay, so having a quick look at Sinister Five. Now, this is an interesting one because I don't think that they're really going to be staying together as a team after this Esports event. They've lost, like, arguably their two most important players in Lately and Elusive. Obviously, Elusive being the most important by far, but I think that Lately brought a lot to the firepower department in this team, which now they're lacking drastically in. And I spoke to one of the individuals, and sort of the narrative that I picked up on was that after the Esports event, they're not really sure what's going to be happening. They're just still competing and sort of having fun with it. So they've brought Hackham and Freaky into the team now. Of course, both of these individuals have played for Sinister Five in the past. Freaky's been a sub for this team, and he's sort of just been shifted in and out over the past few months when they've needed a player. We know what Freaky's capable of. He's a decent individual. He's a decent sub. But, I mean, it's not like he has what it takes to replace Elusive. Nobody really does in South African CSGO, right? And then they've brought Hackham back into the team as well. I'm not really sure where Hackham's been over the past few months. I think I saw him playing in one of the lower tier teams. Like, I don't even want to spitball. I can't remember who it was. But I think he's been competing, I think. But everybody's used to Hackham being in one of the top teams in South African CSGO. And he finds himself here in Sinister 5 once again. So I'm not sure how this is going to be looking over the next few months, whether they're still going to be a team, Whether they make some more changes going forward to try and get this project going again, or whether they're just going to flake away over the next few months, we'll have to find out and see how that ends up playing out. With this team, with this roster, Deviant, Zero Chance, Slayer, Hackam, and Freaky, I don't have like too much hope for them, considering what we saw from them before with Elusive and lately. No disrespect, not taking anything away from the individuals, but I just feel like they don't have that same impetus that they had before with those two individuals. Yes, these individuals in different rosters can 100% be successful. Not talking about these individuals, on a separate basis. Just saying, as this group, as this team, I don't think that they're going to be superseding what we saw from the previous team. That's for sure. So now we shift across to the next team that I'm going to be discussing, and that is DNMK. Now, DNMK, they placed second at Comic-Con Africa Online, right? Like, that was their by far their biggest result. And the team looked good. They made changes a few months before that where they removed Chappie and Lately. They brought Dweezil and Divo into the mix. And I think it definitely increased their stock. It took a bit longer for them than they would have liked to find their mojo and to get that synergy going. But we saw what they were capable of when they competed at Comic-Con Online Africa or whatever. So, I think it's cool for them they at least got to show that face and that it wasn't like a failed project, right? That there was something there for them to work with. But in the end, it wasn't enough for them to stick together. They end up removing Dweezil from the team, and he shifted across to another roster. And Kani, who was removed from that other roster that I'm going to be talking about next, he has joined DNMK, right? So, this is actually quite a like-for-like change when you think about it. Dweezil was a lurker and the second AWP for DNMK, and he was also one of the players that brought a lot of BMT to the roster. He's played in all 3 Comic-Con Africa finals, and once again in that final, he was actually their best player. Arguably he was their best player in that final, or even in like all of those playoff games against Goliath and against ATK, against Sinister Five as well. So the point in case is that he brought a lot of that big match temperament to this DNMK roster. Okay, now why I say it's a like-for-like change is that Kani, he likes to play lurk on the T side. He likes to be a second AWPer as well on the CT side in particular. And he has that BMT which he brings to the teams that he joins. Doesn't matter what the occasion is. When there's a big stage to be played on, Kani is going to be pitching up. You can bet your top dollar. Nothing makes this guy flinch. Nothing makes this guy stress. All he wants to do is win, and he's very good at doing that. So I think this is a good change for Dynamic in general, and the main reason I think that is because Kani just brings an extra level of experience to this team, which I think they were probably lacking a little bit before. When you looked at the individuals that they had on their team, I think that Kani is a big pickup for this Dynamic roster. I think he brings a massive amount of experience, but even more so than the experience he brings a really important second voice to this team. It felt like DNMK got a little bit lost and they didn't really have anything to fall back on when things weren't going their way, when that like puggy playstyle wasn't working out for them. It was like, well, fuck, we better just keep trying it with a different approach and hope that we're able to crack the code. Whereas I think that Kani actually brings another layer to this team now with the second voice. I think he's going to be able to just bring a bit more structure to this team when it's required and when that puggy playstyle might not be working out for them. I also think he can fit into that puggy playstyle as well. So I'm a massive fan of this change, and I think that Kani's definitely increased the stonks of DNMK in general, and I'm keen to see how this plays out over the next few months. I hope that he's able to make a team of this though, and actually stay here, for a number of months, like a 6-month period, and really make a good run of this. Obviously, he's been in and amongst a couple teams over the past few months, so now he finds himself in DNMK, one of the top organizations, giving a lot of support to their players as well with all the hardware and everything else that they need. So I think this could be a big opportunity for Kani. If this doesn't work out for him, I'm not sure like where he's going to be going next, because he's already, he's been a part of the Goliath, he's been a part of Energy, he's been a part of the top orgs in South African CSGO. And now he finds himself in DNMK. If this doesn't work out, I'm not sure where to from here for him, and I really hope this does, and I genuinely believe that it's going to work out. So I'm looking forward to seeing this over the next few months. This is definitely one of the changes that excites me the most. Moving into the last team I'm going to be discussing, we go into Goliath Gaming. Now, I said that the previous change excited me the most. I might actually have just lied, because this change excites me even more, okay? Not because Kani was removed from the team at all. That's not what this is about. the fact that Elusive is joining Goliath Gaming, it gets my juices flowing. No cap. This guy playing at this top level in South African CS is exactly what I was hoping for. South African Counter-Strike is way better off with Elusive playing at the top level. I'll just say that much. Like, we are so lucky and fortunate to have Elusive competing at the top flight South African CSGO once again, considering what this guy has done in his past, going off with Bravado Gaming in 2017 on Project Destiny, and actually finding as much success as they did, the end of 2017, of course, throughout 2018, and finding as much success as they did, you know, relatively speaking. This guy's done it all. He has got so much experience behind him that it's actually crazy. In fact, I'd probably go as far as to say that he is the most experienced player competing in South African CSGO right now. Hands down. Okay. Now, Elusive, and when I say experienced, I don't mean like purely as the number of years that he's been competing. I mean the amount that he's accomplished and the amount that he has seen and had to overcome just has built him up so much, right? He was playing in Sinister Five before, and I know that it was just sort of a thing he was doing for fun. Yes, he took the competition serious, but it wasn't the be-all and end-all for him. He was just sort of like, you know, keeping that competitive bug fed by just, you know, playing in a team who were pretty decent, but we're never going to be like the best team in South Africa, right? But still just kept those competitive juices flowing. Now he finds himself in Goliath Gaming. And I believe that he is going to be contributing more of his time to this team than he did to Sinister Five and taking this more seriously, which gets me so excited because seeing Elusive, you know, wanting to compete and wanting to be the best again means we're going to be seeing another level coming out of him once again, and that means he's going to be elevating his team to that next level as well. He's joined this Goliath Gaming team as the captain, and he's taken over the role as main AWP as well. So main AWP, IGL, huge amount of experience. What more could you be asking for from a Goliath perspective? So yeah, I've been rambling on about Elusive, and for good reason as well. Let me talk a little bit more about Dweezil now. I think that Dweezil's a really sound player that gets brought into this Goliath Gaming team as well. One of the faults about this Goliath team is that they've been, you know, they've got a few, you know, egotistical players, and that's not a bad thing because it's really important to have an ego because it shows that you value yourself and you think that you're better than your opposition. But I think that Dweezil's going to be a bit more of like one of those cool, calm, composed guys, a bit more like Zip Zip sort of thing, and maybe just bring the, you know, just bring everybody down a notch, calm things down. I think that it's going to be changing the dynamic in the team a little bit more as well, with Dweezil being brought into the roster and Elusive as well. Maybe changing the culture a little bit more is what I'm trying to get at. I'm keen to see how it actually affects them in the months to come. I think that this Goliath team were sort of just banging their head against a wall before they made these changes. Of course, that wall being ATK, and unfortunately they weren't able to find a way through. So I think changes were inevitable, and they've actually gone for like the 6-man roster approach. They only cut one player, or Kani left, whatever you want to call it. He shifted across to DNMK, and they brought Dweezil and Elusive into the team, right? So now they've got 6 players, and Adaro is actually going to be sitting on the bench as the sub for now. So, yeah, that means that their playing roster is going to be ADM, Massacre, Dweezil, Zipzip, and Elusive, with Adaro on the bench, right? And ADM, he's shifted from IGL now into the role of second AWP, and I like this change a lot. Listen, ADM was actually one of the best IGLs that we've had in South African CSGO, don't get me wrong, but he's also one of the best players and the best fraggers that we've ever had in South Africa. And personally, I feel like shifting into that committed role of IGL, taking on a huge amount of responsibility, and one of those main responsibilities was, how are we going to crack this code of ATK? How are we going to beat them so we can elevate ourselves to the best team in the country once again? He had that responsibility on his shoulders the whole time as the captain in IGL, constantly trying different things, changing their formations, their structures, their setups, adjusting things in the team to see if he can find the code and crack that code. And I think that responsibility affected his ability to frag a little bit, focusing too much on the team and not enough on himself. And we sort of saw his fragging ability taper off a bit. Now I think with Elusive coming into the team and taking over the reins as IGL, it's going to allow Adam to flourish again and to focus and find his ability to, you know, be that nutty, crazy fragger once again, who can take over the server and absolutely dominate, focus on his clutching, and just being a force to be reckoned with in general as an individual fragger. So I'm really keen to see how ADM is going to be changing now in the months to come, whether we're going to be seeing reach of those heights again of 2018, or just in general how this change is going to be affecting him. So yeah, that's this Goliath team's changed. I think that with Elusive coming into the mix now, this team's has actually been elevated to the next level. I mean, Elusive was he was a part of that Sinister Five team that actually beat ATK on Train. Yes, it was a best of one. Yes, it wasn't a massive game or anything like that. But that was one of the very few losses that ATK suffered over the past few months. It was with Elusive at the helm of the team. Elusive knows how to beat those types of teams. He studies them, he'll figure out their weaknesses, he'll figure out how to adapt and adjust and to counter them. So I think Elusive will certainly be allowing Goliath or elevating Goliath to a point where they're going to be more competitive with ATK. And I'm definitely keen to see how that matchup's going to be playing out over the next few months. So that's the changes, guys. That is the changes that have been made to the active teams that are still competing. I'm going to talk a little bit about two other teams as well. And those two teams are Online Kingdom and XD. Now, Online Kingdom have they've shut down, they've closed their doors as an organization. It was announced a few days before that the CSGO team would be breaking apart as well. That was Ruben, Kana, Falls, Shia, and Chappie was that 5-man roster, okay? They've broken up now, all seeking different opportunities, completely split up. Unfortunate, because I actually saw a lot of potential in that team. I think they look pretty decent. Probably were sort of like starting to reach their skill ceiling, but hey, who knows if they kept working what they might have been capable of doing. Anyway, they opted to rather break apart and seek other opportunities. So that's one of the teams that's made more changes. And then I believe XD are going to be making a number of changes as well to their roster in the next few months. They're playing out this Eve Sports event at the moment, and then we're going to be seeing what sort of changes they bring to the table. The reason I didn't include them in this video is because the changes haven't been official yet, and they're still playing with the old roster. It's like they're going to be making changes in the future, and when those changes come up, then I'll document them. But for now, we're still waiting to see what's going to be happening. So that is the changes that we've seen happening over the past few weeks in South African CSGO, the roster mania, if you will. And in general, I'm a fan of the changes that have taken place. I think that they've been smart changes that these teams have made, not abrupt, unnecessary changes where they're just trying to get players with more firepower. There's been thought and there's been certain decisions that have been made when taking these changes, and I think they've been good ones as well. I think a lot of thought has been put into it, and like I said, in general, I'm a big fan. I think the stonks have increased in most of these cases. And I think the next few months are going to be very interesting. What is interesting is that normally this is where we have the end of the season. This is the end of the year for South African CSGO. We have the big events in October, whether it's Rage or Comic-Con. And after that, we have like 3 months of dead time where, everybody just sort of goes their separate ways. And then come February, we start getting an idea of what to expect for the year. Now we got this Eve Sports event going on. I believe, down the grapevine, I won't say too much, but there's still other events yet to be announced coming up through the year as well, like early December sort of thing. So it's really cool that we've actually still got some CS to go, and we're going to be getting to see these teams who have made these changes in effect in the weeks to come and not have to wait till next year. So with that in mind, really looking forward to seeing how these are going to be playing out, and seeing who's potentially going to be going to the top. Do these teams have what it takes now to maybe go toe to toe with ATK and topple them as the best team in South Africa? We're going to have to wait and find out. Something I didn't mention is this DNMK team. They actually managed to get the win over ATK in a best of one in ESEA 16-14. Kani, who played with Goliath, he played against them a number of times and he didn't get the win once under the Goliath banner against ATK. In his first game with DNMK, they managed to get the win. So I'm sure that's a nice little extra anecdote for him. Anyway, we'll have to see how things play out over the next couple of weeks. I'm definitely looking forward to it.